Welcome to the Meier Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meier Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide, dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us.
Hey everyone, this is Kristin Walker with Mental Health News Radio, and we're back after our holiday hiatus with Dr. Paul Meier. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Kristin. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Paul.
And Melanie Van.
Hey, guys. So good to be back together.
Yes. I think the last one we did was just before we took the Christmas break, and I was sitting in a parking lot for that one, and it was awfully cold outside, but man, it was a good show. Tonight, we're going to talk about getting older and, lessons learned and the effects that those lessons have on our mental health. We have varying, Melanie and I are both in our 40s, she in her early and mine in my late 40s. And Paul, you've already told everyone you're in your
72.
early 70s. So we have a nice age span, and you just spent time with grandkids. So you've had the young perspective. I've spent time with my 28-year-old son and had his perspective of things. And Melanie, you've got your kids. So we have all these different perspectives to draw on. So I think it's a great topic to start the new year off with.
Age is a state of mind.
Yes.
Really. There's people that are in their teens that think they'll never live to be 30, and they think 30 is old, And then, I'm 72 and feel like I want to work 20 more years because my dad retired when he was 80 and regretted it. And my mom beat me at dominoes when she was 95. So for me, 72, I feel like a kid. I got a lot, 20 more years that I want to work before I retire.
I love that. And the whole, the conversation around retirement has really changed in the last few years. I hear, because, I interview people from, all different ages, and I know you, Paul, with your patients, do as well. And Melanie, I know you do when you were counseling. So the language around it is a lot more around, I'm not going to retire because I'm having fun. Retirement is a little bit of a death sentence. So it's not going to happen. So what do you, and that's very different. Before it was, I'm going to work for all these years and then I'm going to retire and then life is going to be fantastic. And I've noticed people that were from older generations that did that, and they very quickly went downhill. Not everybody, but some very quickly went downhill. And that seems to have, informed younger generations about what retirement means to them.
Yeah. I know some great football coaches, for example. I love sports, and I know of some great football coaches who just went whole hog enthusiastically coaching, like college kids or high school kids for years and years. And then at maybe 70 or something like that, 68, 65, they would retire and die within a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I know men are like that when they lose their wife. When women lose their husbands, they do pretty well. We mentioned that before. Men do horrible without a woman, but women do just fine with or without it. But when a husband loses a wife after 40 or 50 years of being married, there's a statistic that I don't want to misquote it, but it's something like, over half of those men die within 18 months after losing a mate, their mate. The women usually do fine. My mom and dad were very close. They loved each other a lot, and I walked in on them in their apartment when they were in their 80s, and they were sitting on the couch smooching, and I teased them about it. I said, "You're too old for that." My mom smiled and said, "No, no, we're not." They loved each other. They loved each other a lot. Would watch TV and hold hands and stuff. But when my dad died, he was 84. So they were both about 84. And of course, she grieved. But a couple months later, she said, "Paul, I feel guilty for telling you this, but this is the happiest time of my life. And I loved your dad dearly, but now I've got, it was always me and him doing stuff when we were married. Now I'm getting together with neighbor ladies, and we're playing skip bowl and all these games, and getting together every day and doing things, and I'm having a blast. I'm having more fun now that I'm a widow than I ever had even when I was married. And I had a fun time being married.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. I mean, I think so many women, and I don't want to say back in the day and say it like that, but I think so, and still today, women feel obligated to caretake, whether it be children or husband. And when those are no longer around, then maybe they actually start practicing some self-care of their own. So maybe they learn a little bit more about themselves. Paul, how old was your mom when she married your dad?
27.
Okay, well, that's not too young. So she had some time to live her life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. When we were going to talk about this, I just pulled up the first article that I saw on the internet, and I found some interesting statistics, and I thought I'd read them and see where that conversation takes us. 19% of women age 40 to 44 years have no children, as compared to only 10% in 1980. In 2009, 1/3 of Americans aged 45 to 63 were single. There's a 50% increase from 1980. This trend shows signs of reversing the former condition. So basically, I mean, things are changing. There's a lot more single elders now, and I think a lot of elders are living by themselves or don't have children. So that really just changes the whole dynamic of aging in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be depressing to me.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't like being by myself. If my wife goes out of town for a week to visit the grandkids, I get really, I mean, I sort of enjoy it for a day or two, the peace and quiet, but after a couple of days, I get really lonely, and I don't like living alone.
Yeah.
That's so, I look at Michael and Michael's 16 years older than I am, so I've stopped adding, that up, but I think he's 63 and I'm going to be 48. And he has some physical problems from playing a lot of sports. And, it's so interesting because he is so independent that he absolutely lives alone just fine. He loves it when I'm there. Like I just came up to visit for the holidays. He does love it when I'm there, and we sit and hold hands and watch movies and laugh and just, oh gosh, we have the best relationship. But we're both okay, see ya.
Yeah.
I don't feel this grand desire to, need to share a house with anyone. I really would rather live by myself, but if I had to share a house with someone, it would be him. And really because he's very independent, and so am I, and we do stuff together when we want. But I know that's not, like, his dad is not that way. His dad needs to have company all the time and stuff. So that used to bother me about him, and now I'm like, I think I'm lucky.
Yeah, definitely. For someone to be that independent.
People have a fear of growing older, even young people, even people in their 20s. Some of them have a fear of growing older, and look at all the advertisements on TV for products and things. And then look at midlife crisis. Women and men are looking for somebody to have an affair with or hook up with in one way or another that's 10 or 20 years younger than them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with marrying somebody that's younger than you. I'm not criticizing anybody, but I'm just saying that men and women nowadays are looking for somebody 20 or 30 years younger even, so they can feel like they're young again. It's
right.
Just so scary for them to be accepting the fact that we're growing older. And it's hard, it's hard to accept that.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting too when people can't be alone, meaning the thought of it, the very thought of being alone is so terrifying to them, especially when they get older, that they will latch onto anyone. It could be a horrible relationship, and yet their fear of being alone makes them, drop standards, drop things that they've carried their whole life just to be with someone, to say that they're with someone. And they're almost like, I've watched people just predatory, even seeming, scanning their horizon for who they can be with because they either got divorced or someone died or whatever, scanning for that next partner and I always think, gosh, that's sad. I mean, at least try being alone for a little bit. Maybe there's some things that you'll learn about yourself that would help you grow and be less afraid of life and getting older and so on. So be alone for a little bit before you latch on to that next person. But, that's could be a judgment I'm making. So
I'm afraid of dying alone. That would be scary, see life ebbing away and be all alone in a hospital room with nobody to come visit or anything. It wouldn't have to be me the moment I died, but dying alone would be a sad thing.
Yeah, I think the term for that is elder orphan. I think there are groups now for elder orphans that don't have, they're in nursing homes and they don't have any family that comes to see them, or, all of their relatives have passed and maybe they didn't have children. And that would not be a desirable place to be, I don't think. That's why I feel like, hospice workers or nurses, they're just such special people to be there in the gap of being in your time of passing and not having anyone to be with you during that time. That would be very scary to me too, Paul, to have no support.
I know my own family, when my mom's dad was real old, we were visiting him and my aunt who took care of him. And he got up and he used to always rock in his chair and sing hymns and read the Bible in German and stuff. But anyway, he got up and took my mom and my aunt and said, come with me in the other room. And he wouldn't let me come with him. I was about 13, I think. And he said, no, you stay here. He took them in the other room and he laid down on his bed. He said, I'm going to die now. It's time for me to go be with Jesus.
Oh my gosh.
And, and he laid down on the bed and suddenly looked up at the ceiling and had a big smile on his face and pointed at it. And his hand dropped, and that's how he died. And one of his sons died the same day in a different state. When my dad was in good health at age 84 and still going up on the roof and nailing shingles and stuff, but he had a genetic problem that he didn't know he had. He had an aorta that was about to rupture, and so it ruptured, and instead of dying instantly, he went to the emergency room and stayed in the hospital in intensive care. But he knew, and we told him the truth, that he had maybe 2 or 3 days to live, and then his body would die. So his cells were just holding out. And so I stayed with him toward the end when I knew it would be, the last 12 hours or so. I just decided I was going to stay with him till the very end. And so we talked and joked around even. I told him, I said, Dad, now, when you die, you have to go you can't go straight to heaven. You got to go to a special place where you learn how to dance first, because you were Baptist. They won't let you in heaven if you can't dance, because they dance in heaven. And he laughed and stuff, and my sister was with us, and we sang a hymn, and then the same thing happened to him. Then that happened to my grandpa. All of a sudden, he looked real surprised and had a big smile on his face and looked up at the ceiling, and as if he saw something. We didn't see anything, but he saw something, and his head just dropped into my hands, and that's how he passed. With a smile on his face. And then when my mom died, she was 97, and she was just getting old, but she was still in pretty good shape when she was 97. We still played games and stuff, but I could beat her after she turned 96. But she was still in pretty good shape. And I had a dream one night where I looked up and saw my mom and dad dancing in heaven. And and I looked up at them and said, Mom and Dad, can I come up and join you? And my mom looked down and said, no, but you'll be here soon enough. Which makes me worry. So you'll be here soon enough. And a whole song was in the dream, a whole song, a 4-minute long song in the dream, Dancing with Mother. You've heard the song Dancing with Father with, I think, Luther Vandross, but, and I woke up from the dream and wrote it down. I just scribbled it down really quick, because I played several musical instruments and things, and it was Dancing with Mother, and I sent it to a professional singer, and he performed it at a concert, and it got published. It didn't sell, anything worth a piddly squat, but I heard a song, and I told my mom about the song, and she said, well, maybe I'm going to be home with Jesus soon. I said, well, I don't know. And she said, well, get a tape recorder. So she tape recorded a 2-minute sermonette for her to preach at her own funeral. So we recorded it, and sure enough, a few weeks later, she was doing fine, and then her kidneys failed.
Wow.
And the doctor called me up and said, she's going to die in the next 48 hours or so, because her kidneys are just rapidly failing. And so I told Mom, I said, Mom, I hate to tell you this, but the doctor said that you're probably going to die in the next couple of days because your kidneys are failing. And she said, oh, I hope he's right. So I've got these aches and pains, and I missed your dad, and I'm looking forward to being with Jesus. And she got right on the phone and called her grandkids and said, I'm going to be in heaven in a couple of days, and I want to make sure you end up being there when you grow up, when you get older. And she called her grandkids one at a time and told them. And then when she died, I stayed with her again. If it was going to be all night, it was going to be all night. But I stayed with her and stayed awake. And her breaths got shallower and shallower. And the hospice nurse was with us there. And with her last breath, she looked up at me with a smile and whispered, "I love you, Paul."
Aww.
She whispered, I love you, Paul. And she died, and her head fell into my hands. And so death was, for me and my family, has been a blessed thing, a wonderful thing. And I mean, in a way, I look forward to it. I don't want to die yet. I like to live to be 100, but if I did, then it'd be all right. I found out I had cancer last spring and got radiation, and I thought, well, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. But I got radiation, and it's all gone, and so I'm thankful. Because
you did so well through that.
But
you
guys helped me. I shared it with you guys, and you prayed me through it. And death itself is scary for people, and they've been looking for a fountain of youth for years, and people on TV advertise millions of dollars worth of products to try to make people feel young. And
I don't feel. I feel sometimes, with just trauma and stuff from childhood, and recreating that to deal with it as an adult, because I couldn't as a kid. I mean, there have been times where I've been like, okay, this whole being a human being thing, like, I'm over it already. This is painful. I just, I'm done. And then I've had so many friends that have been suicidal and so on. And then I was there when I was holding my father's hand when he passed, and he just, before our eyes, turned into he just looked like a teenager. Just right before our eyes, he just turned into a teenager, and it was very peaceful. It was a very peaceful passing. And I don't know what it was, but in that moment that happened, whatever fear I might have had around death was just gone. And the fear of losing other people was gone as well. I missed him terribly, but I feel like he's still here. I know that he is. I talk to him all the time. Mm-hmm. So I tell myself, whether this is true or delusional, whatever, it works for me. He's not gone. I don't need to miss him. I don't need to be angry with him for leaving. A lot of people get very angry when the person that they love leaves because their life, it's really more about them. They're upset about that their life has changed, and that's all understandable, of course. But I looked at it like, he's not really gone. Just the way that I'm used to experiencing him has changed.
Yeah, I think, I pray a lot of times, hey, God, will you give my mom and dad a big hug for me today, and, tell them Merry Christmas and things like that. And the Bible says that we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And I think God lets our parents and our loved ones see good things, there's no tears in heaven, so probably not the bad things that are happening to us, but I think that they can see. And when we have dreams about our parents, lots of times they're real comforting, where the parent is telling you something to encourage you or give you advice or something. And I believe in the spiritual dimension, and I know you gals do too. And I believe sometimes God will use our parents to give us or he'll give us a dream about them telling us something to guide us. And
right.
I believe sometimes they are present and watching us, and when it would be a good time for them rather than a sad time.
Absolutely. It's nice not to be someone, and I could change my mind in a few years, I don't know, but I just I do not have a fear of death. I feel like we go to a really great place, and I'm going to get to see some dogs that I really miss, and I'm going to get to see my grandma that I played gin rummy with.
Yeah. Probably dogs. Other animals.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know. I always tease Michael, you're going to go, his family lives forever. I mean, these people can have, 7 stents in their heart and 12 forms of cancer, and they're still walking around at 98 years old, so I've always said, you, even though you're 16 years older than I am, you probably outlive me. And he's like, no, that can't happen. I won't survive it. I will not survive it if that happens. And, so we can kind of tease each other about that. But I always think, I'll get to see him. He'll be waiting there for me too. So I don't fear it. And I've even wished for it in some really painful times. So I don't have that strong fear of death that many, many people do. So it's hard for me, I guess, to kind of understand that because it's not something that I've ever really been afraid of. What about you, Mel?
No, I mean, I'm thinking so many different things. I was just going to say earlier that I know my horse, my Diamonds, will be in heaven with me. I've had dreams about that, and I know she will be. But I remember the first funeral that I remember going to was my grandfather's, my dad's father. And I think I was probably in my early 20s. I had been to my, great-grandmother's funeral, but I was really just too young to really understand death. And it was, I may have been 20 or just turned 21. And I went to my grandfather's funeral, and it was open casket. And I remember seeing him laying in the casket. And my immediate thought when I saw him was, that's not Granddaddy. Like it just hit me in that moment that it was just a shell and that his spirit was gone. I mean, it literally just hit me on the head like a hammer, that I was like, that's not even him. And I kind of had this feeling that he was kind of floating above it. It's not like I saw him floating above his own body, but I just kind of had this feeling that I just knew in that moment I had a deep understanding of what death was, and things really changed after that. And I don't have a fear of dying at all. Obviously, I want to live to be 102. But I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll probably feel really old
tomorrow,
and decrepit. I don't know.
Yeah, if God appeared and said, "Paul, you're going to die tomorrow," I'd probably be disappointed
me
or
too.
something. But overall, I'd say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
It's your time. It's your time. But my grandmother, on the other hand, after my grandfather died, Paul, she was one of those women that was definitely happier after my grandfather died. She even got nicer. She got real nice to all of the grandkids and stuff. But I mean, literally, I remember her literally waiting on him hand and foot. And he was always very gracious. Don't get me wrong. But I think she just spent her entire life. She was a nurse before she met him. She's looked after people all her life. And when he passed, she, got a place at the Eastern Shore and had a lot of girlfriends, and they traveled a lot and giggled and drank wine and rode bikes. And she really had a lot of fun too. But after he died, my brother passed away, and that really hurt her. And then her first son passed. And after he passed, every single day she would say, I'm ready to go. I want to be with my boys, and she literally, I don't think she was really depressed. I wouldn't say. There probably were times when she was, but she was just ready to go. Yeah. She would say it all the time. She was just ready to go. And the last time that she went into the hospital, she told everybody, I'm not coming out this time. Like she just knew. Yeah. And she stopped eating, and it was just time for her to go. She got her stuff in order before she went into the hospital. And it's interesting. That whole end of life is just such an interesting thing to think about, those that have the time to think about it versus those that, are in accidents or die tragically or something like that. And things are just different. But growing old I guess there are times, I think about my age now, and I'm like, I'm not really in a midlife crisis, but I love getting older because the little things don't bother me anymore. And I feel like in my 40s, I really have become more secure in who I am. And, if you're draining, then I'm just not going to spend time with you. Whereas before, maybe I would have stuck around and thought I needed to try to change your life or something. I don't know. just things shift and change. But I do have friends. Yeah. I have a friend right now that she is in full blown midlife crisis. She has no, she's thinking about going back to medical school, but she's got 6 children, and how in the world would she ever do that? And I mean, she literally tells me every time I talk to her, I feel like something is just passing me by, and I'm getting old, something's passing me by. And so I have, I have friends that have that midlife space where they just feel like they've got to do something, that everything is too late. And I'm just like, dude, you're only 40, you're only 43. Like, you've got a good 40 years to do some other things. So just relax and enjoy your kids, but I understand. Maybe it's just a shift in her soul that's trying to get her to do something different. I don't really know, but Interesting.
Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter says that when you die, the silver cord is loosed and the spirit is released, from that body. Like you were saying about the funeral, that's just a body there. It's a shell.
Yep, it was.
And I know I had an accident that changed my perspective. I may have shared this with you guys before, but on November 15th, 1989, because I remember the date, a week before that, my mother-in-law, who was a very godly woman, was reading Psalm 90:12, teach us to number our days that we may walk wisely on the earth. And she contemplated it and meditated on it and fell asleep and had a dream that one of her kids was going to die in a car wreck, and woke up scared. And so she didn't call any of us at all, but she didn't tell any of us, but she began praying every day that none of her kids or their mates would die in a car wreck. And so none of us knew that. And a week later, I was driving my car home from work, and I was listening to the Psalms on cassette tape, and it was on Psalm 66, where it says, "Men are flying over my head, but God will protect me from the fire and from the water." And to this day, I have no idea what that means, what David was thinking when he wrote that. But just as it said that, I had a head-on collision.
Oh my goodness!
Because I was thinking about that, and I turned left. And we were both going about 50 miles an hour, and it was such a hard collision that my car flew up in the air and flipped over and landed upside down on the roof. And as I was flipping, I thought real peacefully, "Oh, this is what God has in store for me today." And of course, after I broke, when I was hanging upside down by the seatbelt, and I broke the window with my elbow and climbed out, that God did deliver me from the fire and from the water, the radiator burst and all that stuff. My car was totaled really bad, and I stupidly crawled back in to get my Dallas Cowboy Weekly and my cassette tape.
Oh my God!
hoping it wouldn't explode while I was getting that, and crawled back out. After I got back out, I did get scared. Then I realized, it sort of dawned on me what had happened, and then the ambulance got there first, and I told the ambulance, I'm not hurt, and the lady that was driving the other car wasn't hurt, and both cars were just smashed to smithereens, but neither of us had a scratch. And so the ambulance was pulling off, and the cops pulled up, and I was standing in my suit next to my car. He didn't know I was the driver, and he says, "Did the ambulance take away the body?" And I said, "No, I am the body."
Oh wow!
And he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that I lived. I said, "No,
wow.
nobody got hurt." That night when I went to bed, I had a dream, and Jesus was in the dream, and he said, "Paul, wake up and go get that cassette tape and put it in your Walkman, your radio, and listen to it until there's a verse that hits you between the eyes." So I got up and started with Psalm 66, 67, 68, 69, 70. And I said, "God, please hurry. I want to get back to sleep, And when it got to, and I still didn't know anything about my mother-in-law. When it got to Psalm 90:12, it hit me between the eyes. "Teach us to number our days that we may walk wisely on the earth." And it dawned on me, and I told the Lord, I said, "Okay, I'm going to assume from now on that I died on November 15th, 1989. I was in a car accident and I died. And so every day from this day forward is a gift. It's an unmerited gift that I don't deserve."
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meier of the Meier Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meier Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
And so every day is a gift from God that I want to use to the utmost to enjoy and to help others enjoy and to, help people and do good things. So I dreamt that. I had that experience and then went back to sleep. And the next day my mother-in-law called me and she said, I heard you had an accident. And I said, yeah, my car turned upside down and all that. And she said, well, Paul, I've been praying for you. And I didn't tell her about the dream or anything. She said, I've been praying for you every day for the past week that you wouldn't die in a car accident. I said, now why in the world would you pray a prayer like that? And she told me about her experience reading Psalm 90:12 and having a dream and that one of her kids got in a car accident. And so I explained to her that's the verse that I woke up and God hit me in between the eyes with. So that was a real reinforcer to me that it was a meaningful experience. I had a dream one time that my daughter, who was in graduate school at Rosemead at the time in psychology, and that she was going to have an accident. I saw her have an accident in a dream. She was driving down a California highway, and all of a sudden her car came to a stop and somebody ran into her rear end. So I was going to call her about it, and my wife said, no, she'll just think you're nuts, So I didn't call her. But that afternoon, she was driving down a California highway, and her brakes locked suddenly, and somebody ran into her rear end. But fortunately, she wasn't hurt. But when she called me, she said, I told her, I said, no, you're not going to believe this. So ask your mom whether I'm telling you the truth or not. But I had a dream that would happen last night. So your mom and I were praying for you. But when you have experiences like that, it makes you think, when that death's okay when it comes. But in the meantime, let's make the use of each day. Let's live each day one day at a time.
Yeah, those things do really make you appreciate your time here, and they do help on those days when you are really in a lot of pain. Melanie, what do you think about that? Because I know you have those kinds of prophetic dreams too.
I do. I've had some pretty intense dreams, and it's so funny that we're talking about this right now because I've been thinking about some things in my life lately, and I had a dream, Paul, one time that my youngest son was in a car wreck and he actually passed. And I've never had a dream where one of my children has actually passed, and it haunted me for months. This dream I had that he had died in this car wreck. And in my dream, I fell to my knees and I screamed so loud. It was just the worst dream, and it really affected some big decisions I was making in my life at the time. I mean, I've had dreams, after my brother passed away, Chris, and I think I had some real interesting dreams where I just feel like they were kind of visits, and the light was real different in the dreams and everything was real bright and crisp, and they felt kind of like visit dreams. They didn't feel like just dreams that I was dreaming.
That has happened.
Yes.
Only that has happened to scores.
I know.
Scores of my patients.
Yes.
And they lost a loved one, and they'd have dreams where the loved one was coming to visit them and things like that.
Yeah. They were it was just really comforting. I mean, it's not like I got a message or anything, but it was just really comforting that he was happy and he was in a good place, and he was always such a jokester and just loved to have fun. And one of the dreams I had, he was literally in God's house is how I see it. And the stairs were marble, and he was sliding down the stairs of this huge marble mansion, this beautiful, shiny, and was just laughing and so happy, as if just to say, I'm so good, I'm fine.
Did you ever figure out what the dream meant about your son having the accident?
I didn't. I was thinking at the time, about making a pretty big move. And I felt really, really uneasy about it. I think I shared that with you in another interview, Paul. I was thinking about moving to a different area that I've never wanted to live in. And I was thinking about moving back for specific reasons. And I was really just kind of a nervous wreck about it, and had just felt uneasy about it. And then I had this dream, and I recognized the hospital because my 16-year-old son had surgery at the Children's Hospital in Tidewater in Norfolk when he was a child. And the hospital that they took my youngest son to in the dream was the Children's Hospital in Norfolk, which is where I was thinking about moving because I recognized the stainless doors that they took him through. And, I saw them take my son into the doors limp. And then I kept asking about him, and then one of the nurses finally told me that he didn't make it. And as soon as I had that dream, I woke up the next morning and I was just like, I don't need to move.
Maybe God used it.
Maybe God used it
to help you decide not to move.
Yeah, I mean, I was really disturbed about that for a long time. It also it encouraged me to face some really deep-seated fears that I had. And it was just kind of like the fire a catalyst that started me on, I feel like, kind of a little mental health journey to really conquer some anxiety that was just really deeply rooted. So it was definitely, I think God used it in a lot of ways, but yeah, it immediately stopped me in my tracks from even considering making the move.
One sad thing that we ought to talk about right out of time that happens is that a lot of our loved ones become senile.
Yes.
And that's one thing. There's some things about aging that are negative and not any fun. And, of course, we get more diseases. And I think the average person 65 or older takes 7 medications. And, when you're 30 or 35, you don't take any usually. But I've had loved ones. My own brother had Parkinsonism. And when you get Parkinsonism, 50% of the time, you eventually will become psychotic and delusional. And he was such a sweet guy, a loving guy, a former pastor and counselor. But he got delusional and, want to get in fights with people because he thought they were trying to harm his family. And it was sad watching him go downhill. And I know, Kristin, you've talked about, people that you love that
yeah, I get a little, I don't know why I'm not afraid of this. I guess maybe because there's nothing I can do about it, but I don't know about my biological father's side, but I know that 4 members of my mother's side all were senile, and some had very violent tempers and seemed like they regressed back to childhood ages where they were very angry and mean.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, but then on the other side of it would be extremely loving, but it was very, difficult for all of us to hear about this. And then, for those of us that are around that person to experience that behavior. And when someone's in that state, they're not going to listen to you tell them there's a problem.
Oh, when you're delusional.
We need to go to a doctor. Yeah, you're delusional. You're forgetting things. Right. Exactly. Yes. And somehow cutting off relationships with people and doing all kinds of just things that are so unlike them and just absolutely belligerent and downright, I call it pit viper mean if you try to speak any kind of rationale to them. And that's hard because then your last, memories of that person are of them being extremely abusive. And of course it's because of what's happening to them, so they can't really help it.
Yes, their brain chemicals being messed up, their dopamine in particular, and sometimes if they get on an antipsychotic medication, it'll help ease that. Most people, as we get older, get nicer and more loving and gentle and mature and things. But people that get Alzheimer's or other kinds of senility, not all of them get mean or anything, but a lot of times the chemicals really get messed up in your brain and that make you paranoid and delusional and, think people are all out to get you and want to fight them back and things. They can get feisty.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
I have a funny story about a senile moment. Let me tell a funny story, Kristy, and then Kristin, and then you'll, Kristy. What am I thinking, Kristy? I'm getting senile over here. Jeez. No, my grandmother, the same grandmother that recently passed and knew she was passing, my grandfather or my dad went to pick her up at her house. She was living by herself and we were picking her up for Thanksgiving dinner. And so my dad gets to the house and she has on her Christmas sweater. But he doesn't say anything. He just thinks, well, maybe she's just being seasonal. So he goes and picks her up for Thanksgiving dinner and she's got on this Christmas sweater and she walks in the house with us all to eat and she says, Merry Christmas. And it wasn't Christmas. It was Thanksgiving.
And she meant it, right?
She did. Oh, she totally thought she totally thought she was coming for Christmas dinner and none of us said anything, but there were so many little moments like that, or she would turn the heat up to like 90 in the house and eventually my dad had to get a lock for the heater so she couldn't get to it. And they took her car away and she would take the keys to the lawnmower and drive the lawnmower around the neighborhood. And the neighbors would call my dad and be like, Earl, your mama's on the lawnmower again, So people do crazy things when they're senile. But anyway.
They do. They wander off.
Yeah, they do.
I want to be the sweetest person in the nursing home. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm getting nicer and nicer and nicer. I'm not a doormat by any means, and I think I had to go through a stage where where a handful of people would say that I'm not nice, and the reality is they weren't nice, and I didn't take it. That seems to have sort of, I guess that was a few year pass of having some people like that in my life, and I stood up for myself, and now it doesn't seem like I need to learn that lesson as much, if at all, anymore. But I just feel like I'm getting a lot wiser, a lot more patient. I don't go to DEFCON 1 over things. I kind of see ahead in my own, getting older. I'm excited about it. Like, I'm excited that I'm going to be 48. I'm so excited about this. I think it's fantastic. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that I'm getting closer to 50. So to me, it's exciting. And what I hope is that as I continue to get older, that I just am, one of those people, if I end up in a nursing home or wherever I may end up there, that everybody there loves coming to my room because I'm one of the nice patients. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I hope I never get senile. I do fear that. But I mean, fortunately, my mom never did. She died at 97, and she was still pretty, she was more forgetful than she was when she was younger, but she was still in pretty good mental shape. I do fear that. I don't want to, I'd rather that God took me home than that he let me linger around 5 years not knowing who I was or who you were or other people are.
Yeah.
I'd rather go to heaven than go through that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to have to lay around and suffer. My mom talks about that because she's been diagnosed with lupus in the last 2 years, and it affects her connective tissue. So she's got some heart problems, and that'll probably be what ends up getting her is congestive heart failure, and there's bad circulation, and she's just always been really healthy. So this has been really traumatic for her. But, she talks about, please just let me go. If she has to lay around and circulation gets bad and they have to amputate.
And that can affect any part of the body, including the brain.
It
can affect any part of the body.
It really can. So but Paul, I remember reading, I think someone gave me the book actually after my brother died, and it was written by an American Indian, and it was basically his story or someone had written his story of being on his deathbed, and literally it took him a very long time to pass, and he suffered a lot. But really, up until the very last moment, God was working in his life, and he felt like that he needed to last that long and suffer that long to realize what he needed to before he passed. So I don't see reason in suffering for some of the horrible things people have to suffer through, but that book certainly made sense of it. In fact, I think he was supposed to die a year before he actually died, and he was trying to live until he and his wife's 50th wedding anniversary or something, and he actually did it. Yeah. He actually literally lived and died on the day of their wedding anniversary. So it was a real interesting story. So I guess you just never know.
People that find out they have, this is a true research study from cancer victims, that people that have different kinds of cancer, and their doctors, based on statistics, say, you have 18 months to live or 24 months to live or things like that. People that just stuff their feelings and don't talk about it die younger than that. And people that open up and share their experiences and prepare for death and talk about dying and talk about how they feel about it and things like that actually live a lot longer than the expected amount. So it helps you live longer even when you're dying of cancer or things like that, to be able to, share your gut level feelings with people that care.
Which is why I'm so happy that all of us are in the mental health field.
So true.
No one is going to accuse me of not saying every possible thing that I could say in terms of my feelings, good, bad, or indifferent. So I don't feel like I will be in that place thinking, oh, there was that stone that I left unturned in relation to what I told someone or what I shared or what I listened to from other people, just taking that time to listen. That was one of the things that when I was a kid, I was always with my grandma, who I absolutely adored, and I always hung out with older people. And, this is when I was very young, from like 5 years old all the way up until, teenager. And I always have, done some kind of volunteer work with people that are elderly. And I just love listening to the stories about their lives and all that wisdom. And I never got that, oh, I feel sorry for this person thing. I thought they're always fascinating to me as a human being. This person has lived this whole life with all these experiences, and some of them, were pretty racy, or something that you look at the way that they are now, and they tell you something that, they did in their 20s, and I think, you?
Yeah, I get that experience lots of times.
But it's aging, I don't know. It hits everybody differently, but, and it hits our mental health differently. So I guess maybe I have to say it right now, Alzheimer's part, that part could make me nervous. The senility part could make me nervous. I don't want to get mean with it. If that happens, I hope that
That's horrible, wouldn't it?
That I would not like. I hope that I'm super sweet, and that I don't, because if I don't know, because I don't remember something, then there's nothing for me to be upset about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you hope for.
Alzheimer's, if people get it when they're young, then it can be genetic. If people get it when they're old, then it's usually not. We don't know what causes it and what doesn't cause it yet in most cases. And I know people that read a lot or play video games or do things to keep their minds active. They have a lot later onset of senility than people that have idle minds. So exercising your brain can help it to last longer. There's medications now,
Yes.
Aricept, Namenda, other new ones, that if somebody's starting to get Alzheimer's, they can get on those medications or a combination of them, and a third of them will get a lot better, and a third won't get better, but it'll delay the onset of the senility by maybe 5 or 10 years. And a third of them it doesn't affect much. But a lot of people are benefited by modern medications that actually can delay Alzheimer's by a decade.
That's awesome.
One last
10 years. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. One last question I wanted to ask. If what I've heard is if there are things that, root behaviors of someone, that I said root, not rude, but so root behaviors of someone, let's say someone is, OCD or have been extremely moody, or they tend to be negative. I've heard that as they age, and if we're dealing with senility or Alzheimer's, that those behaviors that are so core to who they are and how they've always behaved, those are exacerbated during this time. Is that a true statement that you guys have heard as well?
Lots of times, I don't think in every case it is, but yeah, lots of times people become more like you said, if they have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, maybe they could hide it enough to function, and a lot of people wouldn't even know they had it. But when they get older, they'll put chairs around them and do all sorts of bizarre things and get more OCD to an extreme. I've seen that happen. So
I've watched a lot. I've watched someone who's OCD their entire life, and yes, they can mask it very, very, very well. Not anymore, though. And you can be in your kitchen, I had a friend of mine standing there drinking from a coffee cup, and they're so OCD now in their elderly years that they are literally on their hands and knees wiping the floor in between where that person walked, to the point of almost tripping them, and then wiping the bottom of the cup that they're drinking out of at that moment, so that then the liquid spills on the person, and then wiping the counter where the cup was just sitting. Like, we're talking and following housekeepers around and handymen people, and just like literally 2 inches from that person, just and getting caught up and, getting hurt because they're in the way, and they won't.
And again, in most cases, there's some psychiatrists that specialize in seeing the elderly. And I would advise if that's a relative of yours, of somebody's that's that way, that they see that psychiatrist. But in most cases, different medications can make that significantly better. even if they're senile and don't know where they are and who they are, or the psychosis, if somebody becomes psychotic because of Alzheimer's or Parkinsonism, there's medications they can take that often will make it a lot less severe or even go away. So
getting them to take it is the problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they can become extremely combative and defensive and angry. Yeah, how dare you say that I need that, even though they've taken medication at other times in their lives. And really, at some point, you have to just kind of, okay, I can't force this person to do this. Some members of my family have said, well, if we ever turn out like so-and-so, like Aunt Lou or whatever, please pitch us off the balcony. And because Aunt Lou was the bad example of how you don't want to be when you're a senior citizen in our family. And I'm making up that name, but that this person was like the example of all the kids in the family would say that if we ever turn out like Aunt Lou, please take the wheelchair and find a cliff. Just get rid of us. And sadly, some in the family have become Aunt Lou, and they won't hear of it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that you can do.
Something else that I want to say before we run out of time, as a psychiatrist, is, and I forgot now. We'll have to edit that out. Oh shoot! It was really.
No, this is our
really
Alzheimer's. That's Paul's Alzheimer's.
I forgot. I'm getting.
Yeah.
No way you are.
What was it? Oh, I know what it was. Okay.
Awesome.
Something else I want to say before we run out of time is that a lot of people feel false guilt, like if their parents get senile, that they have to have them live in their home. And I don't think if you want to do that, then it's a free country. You can do that, but I don't recommend that. And if they get, where they're going to wander off into the woods and things, and you have to be with them 24 hours a day, I don't think that's a good thing for your family. That's not good for your marriage. It's not good for kids. And I think putting them in a retirement home is a kinder thing to do for them. They're
absolutely
locked up, and there's people their age that they can hang out with and all that. I know when my mom got old enough, I mean, she lived in an apartment until she was about 94 or 95 or something like that. But then when she got old enough where she would fall down sometimes and couldn't get back up, and she'd have to call me at 3 a.m, and I'd have to drive to her apartment to get her up, and things like that. When that started happening, we moved her to an assisted living facility, and she dreaded it. She said, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. And we said, well, it's time. You've got to. And once she was there about 2 weeks, she said, I wish I would have come here a couple of years ago. So this is fun. I'm having meals with people and playing games with them and having fellowship and watching TV with people. This is wonderful.
Yep.
And she had her, if she wanted to be by herself, she went in her room and was by herself. So I would hate to be a burden on my kids. I'd rather be in a assisted living facility. I think I would enjoy it. I could go live there now and enjoy it,
I would too, but
I'd like to get back out and go to work every day, But,
exactly.
So don't feel like your parents have to live with you when they get older. If you decide to do that, that's your business, and I'm not condemning you, but don't feel like you have to.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Melanie, you close the show tonight, Mel.
I mean, I was just going to say that my grandmother she did not want to go to a nursing home, and she made it she was still spry enough to be so mean to any nurse that my dad sent over there to try to look after her that he just ended up doing it because she would make everyone cry and they would leave. I don't know that it was her being mean and senile as it was she was just determined she was going to stay in her home until she went into the hospital and died, and she did. But, death is just as big of a part of life as living. We're born and then we pass. And I think I remember reading that it might be another American Indian statement. It really is just as big of a part. And animals do dying a lot better than we do, I feel like. They're ready for it. They're prepared. They know their lifespan. So, growing older and passing can be a tough thing for a lot of us, I think. But, it can also be wonderful, wonderful things about growing older. I think you're more comfortable with yourself. You are wiser. It's easier to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You do, I think most of the time you end up having a little bit more time on your hands, which is wonderful. You can pick up, hobbies and such that that might really make you happy, or you've never tried before if you just never had the time. So yeah, I think it's really just about perspective, and hopefully all of us will go into old age healthy. But if that's not the case, then obviously there are more challenges. So grow old gracefully, I guess.
I like being 72, and I feel like the older I get, the more respect I get too from people, and other leaders in my field will call and ask for advice just based on my years of experience and things like that. And then I told you gals in the past couple months, even the White House has called me and had me come there and met with me so I could give them advice on mental health and then on some conference calls and things. And so that feels pretty good. That feels pretty good to be older and have that be a meaningful, positive experience.
Well, Paul, you've worked for every bit of that respect. You've done a lot and contributed a lot and still continue. So you have earned that respect you're getting. Not so sure it's just age. You've worked hard for it.
Maybe it's just more humility now.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Well, there's only one way to go on that. I know the older I get, the more humble I'll get, because there's such a long way to go that, it can't go any other way, Can't get more prideful.
I know. Man, I think about that too. Man, am I so much of an easier person than I was. Even sometimes I think even just, this past year or last year, towards the beginning of the year when I started this podcast network, there was so much drama going on with different people, and I was under so much stress. And I think now, of course, I needed to go through that. It certainly made me wiser, and I'm going into a new year with a new birthday and new age. But I still look at those times and think, what the heck was I so stressed out about? So some of that stuff was just utter nonsense.
Yeah, the things we used to worry about, huh?
That now wouldn't even, that I'd be like, whatever, move on.
Yep.
So, well, I think this was good. We touched on different ideas and truisms for each of us around what it means to get older, no matter what age you are. So thank you both for joining me, and thanks to the listeners for tuning in again to Mental Health News Radio.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.